Lord of Success by Napoleon Hill. Thanks and gratitude to full text of Lord of Success https archive stream Lord of Success text. PDF of Lord of Success https archive details namdhari. Sri Satguru Jagjit Singh eLibrary namdhariElibrary at mail.com. Volume 1 The Principles of Self-Mastery. Introduction to the Mastermind. A definite chief aim. Self-confidence. The habit of saving. Lesson 1 The Principles of Self-Mastery. Introduction to the Mastermind. Time is a master worker that heals the wounds of temporary defeat and equalizes the inequalities and rights the wrongs of the world. There is nothing impossible with time. You can do it if you believe you can. This a course on the fundamentals of success. Success is largely a matter of adjusting oneself to the ever-varying and changing environments of life, in a spirit of harmony and poise. Harmony is based on an understanding of the forces constituting one's environment. Therefore, this course is in reality a blueprint that may be followed straight to success, because it helps you interpret, understand, and make the most of these environmental forces of life. Before you begin reading the Law of Success lessons, you should know something of the history of the course. You should know exactly what the course promises to those who follow it until they have assimilated the laws and principles upon which it is based. You should know its limitations as well as its possibilities as an aid in your fight for a place in the world. From the viewpoint of entertainment, the Law of Success course would be a poor second to most any of the monthly periodicals that may be found on the newsstands. Commentary. It has been said that Napoleon Hill and his philosophy of success have made more millionaires than any other person in history. It might equally well be said that Napoleon Hill inspired more motivational experts than any other man in history. Napoleon Hill was, and more than 30 years after his death continues to be, America's most influential motivational author. That is due partly to the fact that he came to prominence at the beginning of the age of mass communications. But it is due in even larger part to the diligence he applied to the research upon which he based his 17 principles that comprise the Law of Success. It is practically impossible to find a motivational speaker who does not draw upon Hill's work. His influence can be seen in the writings of his early peers, Dale Carnegie and Norman Vincent Peale. Later, many successful authors and speakers such as W. Clement Stone, Og Mandela, A. Nightingale, and Chicken Soup for the Soul author Mark Victor Hansen worked directly with either Napoleon Hill or the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Echoes of Hill's principles can be seen in books by people as diverse as Jose Silva, Mary Kay Ash, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Shakti Gauri, Wally Famous Amos, and Dr. Bernie Siegel. Anthony Robbins, arguably the most successful motivational speaker in recent times, has often cited Napoleon Hill as his inspiration. And best-selling author Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People can be found in the 17 Principles Hill wrote about more than 70 years earlier. End of commentary. An overview. This course has been created for the serious-minded person who devotes at least a portion of his or her time to the business of succeeding in life. I have not intended to compete with those who write purely for the purpose of entertaining. My aim, in preparing this course, has been twofold. First, to help you discover your weaknesses, and second, to help you create a definite plan for bridging those weaknesses. The most successful men and women on earth have had to correct certain weak spots in their personalities before they began to succeed. The most notable of these weaknesses that stand between men and women and success are intolerance, greed, jealousy, suspicion, revenge, egotism, conceit, the tendency to reap where they have not sown, and the habit of spending more than they earn. All of these common enemies of mankind, and many more not here mentioned, are covered by the law of success course in such a manner that any person of reasonable intelligence may master them with but little effort or inconvenience. You should know, at the very outset, that this course has long since passed through the experimental state, that it already has to its credit a record of achievement that is worthy of serious thought and analysis. You should know also that the law of success course has been examined and endorsed by some of the most practical minds of modern times. The law of success lectures. This course was first used as a lecture, which I delivered in practically every city and in many of the smaller localities throughout the United States, over a period of more than 7 years. During these lectures I had assistants located in the audiences to interpret the reaction of those who heard the lecture, and in this manner we learned exactly what effect it had upon people. As a result of this study and analysis, many changes were made. The first big victory of the law of success philosophy was gained when it was used as the basis of a course that trained 3,000 men and women as a sales army. Few of these people had previous experience of any sort in the field of selling. Through this training they were enabled to earn more than $1 million for themselves and paid me $30,000 for my services, over a period of approximately 6 months. The individuals and small groups of salespeople who have found success through the aid of this course are too numerous to be mentioned here, but the number is large and the benefits they derived from the course were definite. The law of success philosophy was brought to the attention of the late Don Armelt, former publisher of the Canton, Ohio Daily News, who formed a partnership with me and was preparing to resign as publisher of the Canton Daily News and take up the business management of my affairs, when he was assassinated on the 16th of July, 1926. Prior to his death, Mr. Mellon had made arrangements with Judge Albert H. Garrett, who was then chairman of the board of the United States Steel Corporation, to present the law of success course to every employee of the Steel Corporation, at a total cost of something like $150,000. This plan was halted because of Judge Gary's death. But it proves that the law of success is an educational plan of an enduring nature. Judge Gary was eminently prepared to judge the value of such a course, and the fact that he analyzed the law of success philosophy and was preparing to invest a huge sum of $150,000 in it is proof of the soundness of all that is said on behalf of the course. Terminology you will observe in this introductory lesson. A few technical terms that may not be clear to you. Don't let this bother you. Make no attempt at first reading to understand these terms. They will become clear to you after you read the remainder of the course. This entire introductory lesson is intended only as a background for the other 16 lessons of the course, and you should read it as such. You should read this lesson several times, as you will get from it at each reading a thought or an idea that you did not get on previous readings. In this introduction you will find a description of a newly discovered law of psychology that is the very foundation stone of all outstanding personal achievements. I refer to this as the mastermind, meaning a mind that is developed through the harmonious cooperation of two or more people who ally themselves for the purpose of accomplishing any given task. If you are engaged in the business of selling, you may profitably experiment with this law of the mastermind in your daily work. It has been found that a group of 6 or 7 salespeople may use the law so effectively that their sales may be increased to unbelievable proportions. Life insurance is supposed to be the hardest thing on earth to sell. This ought not to be true. With an established necessity such as life insurance. But it is, nevertheless, a small group of men working for the Prudential Life Insurance Company, whose sales are mostly small policies, formed a little friendly group for the purpose of experimenting with the law of the mastermind. With the result that every man in the group wrote more insurance during the first 3 months of the experiment than he had ever written in an entire year before. What may be accomplished through the aid of this principle by any small group of intelligent salespeople who have learned how to apply the law of the mastermind will stagger the imagination of the most highly optimistic and imaginative person. Bear this in mind as you read this first lesson of law of success. And it is not unreasonable to expect that this lesson alone may give you sufficient understanding of the law to change the entire course of your life. Commentary: as you read this book you will occasionally encounter a term such as mastermind that has, in the years since Napoleon Hill coined the term, taken on a connotation that he never intended. Hill first published this work in 1928, a time when Freud and Jung were still developing the study of human psychology, and the terminology had not yet found its way into common usage. The now commonly accepted psychological term that comes closest to capturing what Napoleon Hill meant by the mastermind is what Jung called the collective unconscious. But what Hill was describing goes beyond Jung's theory to include other concepts, including Edward de Bono's techniques of lateral thinking and brainstorming, and many of the ideas behind modern management buzzwords such as quality circle, synergy, and thinking outside the box. Hill's term mastermind may seem quaint to the modern reader, but for all the psychobabble that is now part of everyday speech, there is no other term that encompasses all that Hill had in mind. End of commentary. Personalities: it is the personalities behind a business that determine the measure of success the business will enjoy. Modify those personalities so they are more pleasing and more attractive to the patrons of the business, and the business will thrive. In any of the great cities of the United States, merchandise of similar nature and price can be found in scores of stores. Yet you will find there is always one outstanding store that does more business than any of the others. The reason for this is that behind that store is someone who is paying close attention to the personalities of those who come in contact with the public. People buy personalities as much as merchandise. And it is a question if they are not influenced more by the personalities with which they come in contact than they are by the merchandise. Commentary: Hill is prophetic in these paragraphs. His description of the importance of personality in service in business anticipates the growth of the service industries that, by the end of the 20th century, dominated the economy. End of commentary. Service life insurance has been reduced to such a scientific basis that the cost of insurance does not vary to any great extent, regardless of the company from which one purchases it. Yet out of the hundreds of life insurance companies doing business, less than a dozen companies do the bulk of the business of the United States. 1. Personalities. 99 people out of every 100 who purchase life insurance policies do not know what is in their policies and, what seems more startling, do not seem to care. What they really purchase is the pleasing personality of some man or woman who knows the value of cultivating such a personality. Your business in life, or at least the most important part of it, is to achieve success. Success, within the meaning of that term as covered by this course on the laws of success, is the attainment of your definite chief aim without violating the rights of other people, regardless of what your major aim in life may be. You will attain it with much less difficulty after you learn how to cultivate a pleasing personality and after you have learned the delicate art of aligning yourself with others in a given undertaking without friction or envy. One of the greatest problems of life, if not in fact the greatest, is that of learning the art of harmonious negotiation with others. This course was created for the purpose of teaching people how to negotiate their way through life with harmony and poise, free from the destructive effects of disagreement and friction which bring millions of people to misery, want, and failure every year. No man has a chance to enjoy permanent success until he begins to look in a mirror for the real cause of all his mistakes. With this statement of the purpose of the course, you should be able to approach the lessons with the feeling that a complete transformation is about to take place in your personality. You cannot enjoy outstanding success in life without power, and you can never enjoy power without sufficient personality to influence other people to cooperate with you in a spirit of harmony. This course shows you step by step how to develop such a personality. Lesson by lesson. The following is a statement of what you may expect from the 17 laws of success. The mastermind will outline the physical and psychological laws that underlie these lessons. A definite chief aim will teach you how to save the wasted effort the majority of people expend in trying to find their life's work. This lesson will show you how to do away forever with aimlessness and fix your heart and hand on a definite, well-conceived purpose as a life's work. Self-confidence will help you master the 6 basic fears with which every person is cursed. The fear of poverty, the fear of ill health, the fear of old age, the fear of criticism, the fear of loss of love of someone, and the fear of death. It will teach you the difference between egotism and real self-confidence that is based on definite, usable knowledge. The habit of saving will teach you how to distribute your income systematically so that a definite percentage of it will steadily accumulate, thus forming one of the greatest known sources of personal power. No one may succeed in life without saving money. There is no exception to this rule, and no one may escape it. Initiative and leadership will show you how to become a leader instead of a follower in your chosen field of endeavor. It will develop in you the instinct for leadership that will cause you gradually to gravitate to the top in all of your undertakings. Imagination will stimulate your mind so that you will conceive new ideas and develop new plans that will help you in attaining the object of your definite chief aim. This lesson will teach you how to build new houses out of old stones, so to speak. It will show you how to create new ideas out of well-known concepts, and how to put old ideas to new uses. Enthusiasm will enable you to saturate all with whom you come in contact with interest in you and in your ideas. Enthusiasm is the foundation of a pleasing personality, and you must have such a personality in order to influence others to cooperate with you. Self-control is the balance wheel with which you control your enthusiasm and direct it where you wish it to carry you. This lesson will teach you, in a most practical manner, to become the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. The habit of doing more than paid for is one of the most important lessons of this law of success course. It will teach you how to take advantage of the law of increasing returns, which will eventually ensure you a return in money far out of proportion to the service you render. No one may become a real leader in any walk of life without practicing the habit of doing more work and better work than that for which they are paid. A pleasing personality is the fulcrum on which you must place the crowbar of your efforts, and when so placed, with intelligence, it will enable you to remove mountains of obstacles. This one lesson alone has made scores of master salespeople. It has developed leaders overnight. It will teach you how to transform your personality so that you may adapt yourself to any environment, or to any other personality, in such a manner that you may easily dominate. Accurate thinking is one of the important foundation stones of all enduring success. This lesson teaches you how to separate facts from mere information. It teaches you how to organize known facts into two classes, the important and the unimportant. It teaches you how to determine what is an important fact. It teaches you how to build definite working plans in the pursuit of any calling, based on facts. Concentration teaches you how to focus your attention on one subject at a time until you have worked out practical plans for mastering that subject. It will teach you how to ally yourself with others in such a manner that you may have the use of their entire knowledge to back you up in your own plans and purposes. It will give you a practical working knowledge of the forces around you and show you how to harness and use these forces in furthering your own interests. Cooperation will teach you the value of teamwork in all you do. In this lesson you will be taught how to apply the law of the mastermind described in this introduction and in lesson 2. This lesson will show you how to coordinate your own efforts with those of others, in such a manner that friction, jealousy, strife, envy, and greed will be eliminated. You will learn how to make use of all that other people have learned about the work in which you are engaged. Profiting by failure will teach you how to make stepping stones out of all of your past and future mistakes and failures. It will teach you the difference between failure and temporary defeat, a difference which is very great and very important. It will teach you how to profit by your own failures and by the failures of other people. Tolerance will teach you how to avoid the disastrous effects of racial and religious prejudices, which mean defeat for millions of people who permit themselves to become entangled in foolish argument over these subjects, thereby poisoning their own minds and closing the door to reason and investigation. His lesson is a companion to the one on accurate thought, because no one could become an accurate thinker without practicing tolerance. Intolerance closes the book of knowledge and writes on the cover, "Finished." I have learned it all. Intolerance makes enemies of those who should be friends. It destroys opportunity and fills the mind with doubt. mistrust, and prejudice. Practicing the Golden Rule will teach you to make use of this great universal law of human conduct in such a way that you may easily get harmonious cooperation from any individual or group of individuals. Lack of understanding of the law upon which the Golden Rule philosophy is based is one of the major causes of failure for millions of people who remain in misery, poverty, and want all their lives. This lesson has nothing whatsoever to do with religion in any form, nor with sectarianism, and nor do any of the other lessons of this course. The universal law of cosmic habit force, the last lesson, will show you how to apply the principles in the first 16 lessons to transform not only your thoughts but also your habits. Through this change in the ways you behave and respond, you will put yourself in total harmony with your environment. Success is a result of achieving such harmony. When you have mastered these 17 laws and made them your own, as you could do within a period of 15 to 30 weeks, you will be ready to develop sufficient personal power to ensure the attainment of your definite chief aim. The purpose of these 17 laws is to develop or help you to organize all the knowledge you have, and all you acquire in the future, so you may turn this knowledge into power. You should read this book with a notebook by your side, for you will observe that ideas will begin to flash into your mind as you read, as to ways and means of using these laws in advancing your own interests. You should also begin teaching these laws to others about whom you care, as it is a well-known fact that the more one tries to teach a subject, the more one learns about that subject. A parent, for example, may so indelibly fix these 17 laws of success in the minds of their children that this teaching will change the entire course of their lives. If you are married, you should also interest your spouse in studying this course, for reasons that will be clear before you have finished reading this lesson. Power is one of the three basic objects of human endeavor. Power is of two types, that developed through coordination of natural physical laws, and that developed by organizing and classifying knowledge. Power growing out of organized knowledge is the more important because it places in your possession a tool with which you may transform, redirect, and to some extent harness and use the other form of power. The object of this course is to mark the route by which you may safely travel in gathering the facts that you wish to weave into your fabric of knowledge. There are two major methods of gathering knowledge: by studying, classifying, and assimilating facts which have been organized by other people, and through one's own process of gathering, organizing, and classifying facts, generally called personal experience. This lesson deals mainly with the ways and means of studying the facts and data gathered and classified by other people. End of commentary. The mastermind and the structure of the universe in the past few centuries. Scientists have discovered and catalogued the physical elements of which all material forms in the universe consist. If you must slander someone, don't speak IT, but write IT. Write IT in the sand, near the water's edge. Commentary in the following pages. Hill explains basic laws of physics as they were understood in his time. There are errors in his understanding that will be recognized by even non-choosists. Hill, for example, says that electrons may be either positive or negative. An electron, we now know, always carries a negative charge, and a whole branch of physics studies particles much smaller than the electron. a world of which Hill hadn't an inkling, where Hill digresses to discuss specifics. Small sections have been deleted. Hill would have deleted them himself had he known more. But it is important to read the outlines of his description of physical matter as a metaphor or parallel for the laws that govern human behavior. That is the way he intended this section to be read. Here Hill is trying to find a physical basis to explain the extremely mysterious but altogether indisputable power of the mastermind. End of commentary. By study and analysis and accurate measurements, humans have discovered the bigness of the material side of the universe as represented by planets, suns, and stars, some of which are known to be over 10 million times as large as the little Earth on which we live. On the other hand, man has discovered the littleness of the physical forms that constitute the universe by reducing the physical elements to molecules, atoms, and, finally, to the smallest particle, the electron. An electron cannot be seen. It is but a center of force consisting of a positive or a negative. The electron is the beginning of everything of a physical nature. Molecules, atoms, and electrons to understand both the detail and the perspective of the process through which knowledge is gathered, organized, and classified. It seems essential to begin with the smallest and simplest particles of physical matter, because these are the ABCs with which nature has constructed the entire framework of the physical portion of the universe. The molecule consists of atoms, which are little invisible particles of matter revolving continuously with the speed of lightning on exactly the same principle that the Earth revolves around the Sun. These little particles of matter known as atoms, which revolve in one continuous circuit in the molecule, are made up of electrons, the smallest particles of physical matter. As already stated, the electron is nothing but two forms of force. The electron is uniform, of but one class, size, and nature. Thus, in a grain of sand or a drop of water, the entire principle upon which the whole universe operates is duplicated. How marvelous! How stupendous! You may gather some slight idea of the magnitude of it all the next time you eat a meal, by remembering that every piece of food you eat, the plate on which you eat it, the tableware, and the table itself are, in final analysis, but a collection of electrons. In the world of physical matter, whether one is looking at the largest star that floats through the heavens or the smallest grain of sand to be found on Earth, the object under observation is but an organized collection of molecules, atoms, and electrons revolving around one another at inconceivable speed. Nothing is ever still, although nearly all physical matter may appear, to the physical eye, to be motionless. There is no solid physical matter. The hardest piece of steel is but an organized mass of revolving particles. Moreover, the electrons in a piece of steel are of the same nature and move at the same rate of speed as the electrons in gold, silver, brass, or pewter. The forms of physical matter appear to be different from one another, and they are different because they are made up of different combinations of atoms, although the electrons in these atoms are always the same, except that some electrons are positive and some are negative, meaning that some carry a positive charge of electrification while others carry a negative charge. Through the science of chemistry, matter may be broken up into atoms, which are, within themselves, unchangeable. The elements are created through, and by reason of, the combining and changing of the positions of the atoms. Thus it may be seen that the physical elements of the universe differ from one another only in the number of electrons composing their atoms, and in the number and arrangement of those atoms in the molecules of each element. As an illustration, an atom of mercury contains 80 positive charges, electrons, in its nucleus and 80 negative outlying charges, electrons. If only the chemist were to expel 2 of its positive electrons, it would instantly become the metal known as platinum. If only the chemist could then go a step further and transform the platinum into gold. The formula through which this electronic change might be produced has been the object of diligent search by the alchemists all down the ages, and by the modern chemists of today. It is a fact known to every chemist that literally tens of thousands of synthetic substances may be composed out of only 4 kinds of atoms: hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon. It may be stated as a literal truth that the atom is the universal particle with which nature builds all material forms. From a grain of sand to the largest star that floats through space, the atom is nature's building block out of which she erects an oak tree or a pine, a rock of sandstone or granite, a mouse or an elephant. Commentary Hill is indicating here that the universe is filled with invisible untapped energy. It is the kind of energy that would later be demonstrated in the explosion of the first atomic bomb. But the essential message of this example is this: around a clump of matter there is a swirl of energy. That energy determines whether something attracts other objects or whether it repels them. The nature of this energy can allow 2 hydrogen atoms to bond with an oxygen atom to form a molecule of water, or a sodium and a chloride atom to join to create a molecule of salt. The nucleuses of the atoms are never changed, but the atoms themselves are joined into something new because of the nature of their energy. In a mastermind group, the energy of their individual minds surrounds the people who comprise the group. Their energies interact, and what results is something new and different. End of commentary. These facts concerning the smallest analyzable particles of matter have been briefly referred to as a starting point from which we shall undertake to ascertain how to develop and apply the law of power. Vibrating matter. It has been noticed that all matter is in a constant state of vibration or motion, that the molecule is made up of rapidly moving particles called atoms, which, in turn, are made up of rapidly moving particles called electrons. In every particle of matter is an invisible force which causes the atoms to circle around one another at an inconceivable rate of speed. One rate of vibration causes what is known as sound. The human ear can detect only the sound that is produced through from 20 to about 20,000 cycles per second. As the rate of cycles per second increases above that which we call sound, they begin to manifest themselves in the form of heat. Today this phenomenon is used in microwave ovens. Still higher up the scale, vibrations or cycles begin to register in the form of light. Ultraviolet rays are normally invisible, and energy with a wavelength of higher order than ultraviolet is also invisible but can have a tremendous effect on physical objects. Science is still probing these upper limits, and perhaps future discoveries will explain what today remains a mystery. Yet still higher up the scale, just how high no one is able to say at this point. The vibrations or cycles create the power, I believe, with which humans think. It is my belief that all vibrations which produce energy are simply varying forms of the same thing. The difference is in the rate of vibration. The difference between light and sound is only the rate of vibration. Thoughts, too, are energy. Therefore, the only difference between thought, sound, heat, or light is the number of vibrations per second. Just as there is only one form of physical matter of which the Earth and all the other planets, suns, and stars are composed, so ts there but one form of energy, which causes all matter to remain in a constant state of rapid motion. Dr. Alexander Graham Bell, inventor of the long-distance telephone and one of the accepted authorities on the subject of vibration, is here introduced in support of my theories of vibration. Suppose you have the power to make an iron rod vibrate with any desired frequency in a dark room. At first, when vibrating slowly, its movement will be indicated by only one sense, that of touch. As soon as the vibrations increase, a low sound will emanate from it and it will appeal to two senses. At about 32,000 vibrations to the second the sound will be loud and shrill, but at 40,000 vibrations it will be silent and the movements of the rod will not be perceived by touch. Its movements will be perceived by no ordinary human sense. From this point up to about 1,500,000 vibrations per second, we have no sense that can appreciate any effect of the intervening vibrations. After that stage is reached, movement is indicated first by the sense of temperature and then, when the rod becomes red hot, by the sense of sight. Don't be afraid of a little opposition. Remember that the kite of success generally rises against the wind of adversity, not with IT. At 3 million it sheds violet light. Above that it sheds ultraviolet rays and other invisible radiations, some of which can be perceived by instruments and employed by us. Now, it has occurred to me that there must be a great deal to be learned about the effect of those vibrations in the great gap where the ordinary human senses are unable to hear, see, or feel the movement. The power to send wireless messages by other vibrations lies in that gap, but the gap is so great that it seems there must be much more. You must make machines to practically supply new senses, as the wireless instruments do. Can it be said, when you think of that great gap, that there are not many forms of vibrations that may give us results as wonderful as, or even more wonderful than, the wireless waves? It seems to me that in this gap lie the vibrations that we have assumed to be given off by our brains and nerve cells when we think. But then, again, they may be higher up, in the scale beyond the vibrations that produce the ultraviolet rays. Note, the last sentence suggests my theory. Do we need a wire to carry these vibrations? Will they not pass through the ether without a wire, just as the wireless waves do? How will they be perceived by the recipient? Will he hear a series of signals or will he find that another man's thoughts have entered into his brain? We may indulge in some speculations based on what we know of the wireless waves, which, as I have said, are all we can recognize of a vast series of vibrations that theoretically must exist. If the thought waves are similar to the wireless waves, they must pass from the brain and flow endlessly around the world and the universe. The body and the skull and other solid obstacles would form no obstruction to their passage. as they pass through the ether that surrounds the molecules of every substance, no matter how solid and dense. Render more service than that for which you are paid, and you will soon be paid for more than you render. The law of increasing returns takes care of this. You ask if there would not be constant interference and confusion if other people's thoughts were flowing through our brains and setting up thoughts in them that did not originate with ourselves. How do you know that the thoughts of others are not interfering with yours now? I have noticed many phenomena of mind disturbances that I have never been able to explain. For instance, there is the inspiration or the discouragement that a speaker feels in addressing an audience. I have experienced this many times in my life and have never been able to define exactly the physical causes of it. Many recent scientific discoveries, in my opinion, point to a day not too far distant perhaps, when we will read one another's thoughts. When thoughts will be conveyed directly from brain to brain without intervention of speech, writing, or any of the present known methods of communication. It is not unreasonable to look forward to a time when we shall see without eyes, hear without ears, and talk without tongues. Briefly, the hypothesis that mind can communicate directly with mind rests on the theory that thought or vital force is a form of electrical disturbance, that it can be taken up by induction and transmitted to a distance either through a wire or simply through the all-pervading ether, as in the case of wireless telegraph waves. There are many analogies suggesting that thought is of the nature of an electrical disturbance. A nerve, which is of the same substance as the brain, is an excellent conductor of the electric current. When we first passed an electrical current through the nerves of a dead man, we were shocked and amazed to see him sit up and move. The electrified nerves produced contraction of the muscles very much as in life. The nerves appear to act upon the muscles very much as the electric current acts upon an electromagnet. The current magnetizes a bar of iron placed at right angles to it, and the nerves produce, through the intangible current of vital force that flows through them, contraction of the muscular fibers that are arranged at right angles to them. It would be possible to cite many reasons why thought and vital force may be regarded as of the same nature as electricity. The electric current is held to be a wave motion of the ether, the hypothetical substance that fills all space and pervades all substances. We believe there must be ether because without it the electric current could not pass through a vacuum, or sunlight through space. It is reasonable to believe that only a wave motion of a similar character can produce the phenomena of thought and vital force. We may assume that the brain cells act as a battery and that the current produced flows along the nerves. But does it end there? Does it not pass out of the body in waves that flow around the world unperceived by our senses? Just as the wireless waves passed unperceived before Hertz and others discovered their existence. Every mind, both a broadcasting and a receiving station, more times than I can enumerate. I have proven to my own satisfaction at least, that every human brain is both a broadcasting and a receiving station for vibrations of thought frequency. If this theory should turn out to be a fact, and methods of reasonable control should be established, imagine the part it would play in the gathering, classifying, and organizing of knowledge. The possibility, much less the probability, of such a reality is staggering. Thomas Paine was one of the great minds of the American revolutionary period. To him more, perhaps, than to any other one person. We owe both the beginning and the happy ending of the revolution. For it was his keen mind that both helped in drawing up the Declaration of Independence and in persuading the signers of that document to translate it into terms of reality. Paine thus described it, in speaking of the source of his great storehouse of knowledge. Any person who has made observations on the state of progress of the human mind by observing his own, cannot but have observed that there are two distinct classes of what are called thoughts. Those that we produce in ourselves by reflection and the act of thinking, and those that bolt into the mind of their own accord. I have always made it a rule to treat these voluntary visitors with civility, taking care to examine, as well as I was able, if they were worth entertaining. And it is from them I have acquired almost all the knowledge that I have. As to the learning that any person gains from school education, it serves only like a small capital, to put him in the way of beginning learning for himself afterwards. Every person of learning is finally his own teacher, the reason for which is that principles cannot be impressed upon the memory. Their place of mental residence is the understanding, and they are never so lasting as when they begin by conception. In the foregoing words Paine described an experience that at one time or another is the experience of every person. Who is there so unfortunate as not to have received positive evidence that thoughts and even complete ideas will pop into the mind from outside sources? I believe that every thought vibration released by every brain is picked up by the ether and kept in motion in circuitous wavelengths corresponding in length to the intensity of the energy used in their release. That these vibrations remain in motion forever. That they are one of the two sources from which thoughts that pop into one's mind emanate. The other source being direct and immediate contact through the ether with the brain releasing the thought vibration. Every failure is a blessing in disguise. Providing IT teaches some needed lesson one could not have learned without IT. Most so-called failures are only temporary defeats. Thus it will be seen that if this theory is a fact, the boundless space of the whole universe is now and will continue to become literally a mental library wherein may be found all the thoughts released by human beings. Commentary: imagine what a part this principle plays in every walk of life. You have probably experienced it with those you love, or with someone you work alongside. There you are, both of you considering the solution to some problem, and you hit on the same idea at the same moment. You have probably also noticed that the intensity of thoughts can increase their power to affect other minds. When you listen to a passionate speaker, don't you sometimes know what will be said next? Even the words that will be used. This may sometimes be due to simple logical interpretation, yet it is just as likely to happen when you are hearing someone speak on something you know little about. In such a case, you have little basis for anticipating anything, yet the power of the other person's thoughts conveys to you the ideas that are being expounded. Imagine, then, applying this effect to your pursuit of success through harmonious and purposeful alliance of two or more minds. Two words are key here: harmonious and purposeful. End of commentary. Organized knowledge. Here I am laying the foundation for one of the most important hypotheses enumerated in Lesson 3. This is a lesson on organized knowledge. Most of the useful knowledge to which the human race has become heir has been preserved and accurately recorded in nature's Bible. By turning back the pages of this unalterable Bible, we have read the story of the terrific struggle through and out of which the present civilization has grown. The pages of this Bible are made up of the physical elements of which this earth and the other planets consist, and of the ever that fills all space. By turning back the pages written on stone and covered near the surface of this earth on which we live, we have uncovered the bones, skeletons, footprints, and other unmistakable evidence of the history of animal life on this earth, planted there for our enlightenment and guidance by the hand of Mother Nature throughout unbelievable periods of time. The evidence is plain and unmistakable. The great stone pages of nature's Bible found on this earth, and the endless pages of that Bible represented by the ever wherein all past human thought has been recorded, constitute an authentic source of communication between the Creator and His creation. This Bible was begun before humankind had reached the thinking stage. Indeed, before life had reached the amoeba, one-cell animal, stage of development. This Bible is above and beyond our power to alter. Moreover, it tells its story not in the ancient dead languages or hieroglyphics but in universal language which all who have eyes may read. Nature's Bible, from which we have derived all the knowledge that is worth knowing, is one that no one may alter or in any manner tamper with. The most marvelous discovery yet made is that of the recently discovered radio principle. Imagine picking up the ordinary vibration of sound and transforming that vibration from audio frequency into radio frequency, sending it to a properly attuned receiving station and then transforming it back into its original form of audio frequency, all in the flash of a second. It should surprise no one that such a force could gather up the vibration of thought and keep that vibration in motion forever. The instantaneous transmission of sound, by means of the modern radio apparatus, makes not only possible but also probable my theory, that thought vibration can connect mind to mind. Commentary Napoleon Hill wrote these words in 1927, a time of great optimism in America. The economy was booming, and advances in science and industry were happening so swiftly that it seemed to many people that nothing was impossible. Needless to say, mind-to-mind communication ain't not happen in Hill's lifetime. However, if you take the extraordinary work being done at the beginning of the 21st century in communications technology and artificial intelligence, and combine it with the knowledge being gained about DNA and the human genome, it seems possible, perhaps even probable, that in some form Hill's theory of mind-to-mind communication will be realized. End of commentary. The mastermind. We come now to the next step in the description of the ways and means by which one may gather, classify, and organize useful knowledge, through the harmonious alliance of two or more minds, out of which grows a mastermind. I have searched in vain through all the textbooks and essays available on the subject of the human mind, but nowhere did I find even the slightest reference to the principle here described as the mastermind. The term first came to my attention through an interview with Andrew Carnegie, as described in Lesson 2. Mind chemistry. It is my belief that the mind is made up of the same universal energy as that which fills the universe. It is a fact as well known to the layman as to the scientist, that some minds clash the moment they come in contact with each other, while other minds show a natural affinity for each other. Between the two extremes of natural antagonism and natural affinity growing out of the meeting or contacting of minds, There is a wide range of possibility for varying reactions of mind upon mind. Some minds are so naturally adapted to each other that love at first sight is the inevitable outcome of the contact. Who has not known of such an experience? In other cases, minds are so antagonistic that violent mutual dislike shows itself at first meeting. These results occur without a word being spoken, and without the slightest signs of any of the usual causes for love and hate acting as a stimulus. It is quite probable that the mind is made up of energy, and when two minds come close enough to form a contact, the mixing of the units of this mind stuff sets up a chemical reaction and starts vibrations that affect the two individuals pleasantly or unpleasantly. The effect of the meeting of two minds is obvious to even the most casual observer. Every effect must have a cause. What could be more reasonable than to suspect the cause of the change in attitude between two minds that have just come in close contact is none other than the disturbance of the electrons or units of each mind in the process of rearranging themselves in the new field created by the contact. For the purpose of establishing this lesson on a sound foundation, we have gone a long way towards success by admitting that the meeting or coming in close contact of two minds sets up in each of those minds a certain noticeable effect or state of mind quite different from the one existing immediately prior to the contact. While it is desirable, it is not essential to know the cause of this reaction of mind upon mind. That the reaction takes place in every instance gives us a starting point from which we may show what is meant by the term mastermind. A mastermind may be created through the bringing together or blending, in a spirit of perfect harmony, of two or more minds. Out of this harmonious blending, the chemistry of the mind creates a third mind which may be appropriated and used by one or all of the individual minds. This mastermind will remain available as long as the friendly, harmonious alliance between the individual minds exists. It will disintegrate and all evidence of its former existence will disappear the moment the friendly alliance is broken. Commentary: there is a strong parallel between what Hill is saying here about the interrelation of minds and the theories of the revolutionary philosopher, scientist, designer Buckminster Fuller. In the introduction to Synergetics, Fuller writes, "Humanity has been deprived of comprehensive understanding. Specialization has bred feelings of isolation, futility, and confusion in individuals." Hill believed that the mastermind draws its members out of their fields of specialization into a group the power of which is greater than its component parts. Macrocosmically, Fuller says that we must understand all elements and operations of the universe as interconnected. In Synergetics he defines universe as the comprehensive, historically synchronous, integral aggregate system embracing all the separate integral aggregate systems of all men's consciously apprehended and communicated to self or others, non-simultaneous, non-identical, but always complementary and only partially overlapping. Macro-micro, always and everywhere, omni-transforming, physical and metaphysical, weighable and unweighable event sequences. Universe is a dynamically synchronous scenario. End of commentary. The meeting of minds. This principle of mind chemistry is the basis and cause for practically all the soulmate and eternal triangle cases. so many of which unfortunately find their way into the divorce courts and meet with popular ridicule from ignorant and uneducated people who manufacture vulgarity and scandal out of one of the greatest of nature's laws. The entire civilized world knows that the first 2 or 3 years of association after marriage are often marked by much disagreement, of a more or less petty nature. These are the years of adjustment. If the marriage survives them, it is more than apt to become a permanent alliance. These facts no experienced married person will deny. Again we see the effect without understanding the cause. To believe in the heroic makes heroes. Disreason. While there are yet other contributing causes, lack of harmony during these early years of marriage is often due to the slowness of the chemistry of the minds in blending harmoniously. Stated differently, the electrons or units of the energy called the mind are often neither extremely friendly nor antagonistic upon first contact, but through constant association they gradually adapt themselves in harmony, except in rare cases where association has the opposite effect of leading, eventually, to open hostility between these units. It is a well-known fact that after a man and a woman have lived together for 10 to 15 years they become practically indispensable to each other, even though there may not be the slightest evidence of the state of mind called love. Moreover, this association and relationship not only develops a natural affinity between the two minds sexually, but it actually causes the two people to take on a similar facial expression and to resemble each other closely in many other marked ways. So marked is the effect of the chemistry of the human mind that any experienced public speaker may quickly interpret the manner in which his or her statements are accepted by the audience. Antagonism in the mind of but one person in an audience of 1,000 may be readily detected by the speaker who has learned how to feel and register the effects of antagonism. Moreover, the public speaker can make these interpretations without observing or in any manner being influenced by the expression on the faces of those in the audience. Because of this, an audience may cause a speaker to rise to great heights of oratory, or heckle him or her into failure, without making a sound or denoting a single expression of satisfaction or dissatisfaction through the features of the face. All master salespeople know the moment the psychological time for closing has arrived. Not by what the prospective buyer says but from the effect of the chemistry of his or her mind as interpreted or felt by that salesperson. Words often belie the intentions of those speaking them, but a correct interpretation of the chemistry of the mind leaves no loophole for such a possibility. Every able salesperson knows that the majority of buyers have the habit of affecting a negative attitude almost to the very climax of a sale. Every able lawyer has developed a sixth sense whereby he or she is enabled to feel their way through the most artfully selected words of the clever witness who is lying, and correctly interpret what is in the witness's mind. Through the chemistry of the mind, many lawyers have developed this ability without knowing the real source of it. They possess the technique without the scientific understanding upon which it is based. Many salespeople have done the same thing. One who is gifted in the art of correctly interpreting the chemistry of the minds of others may, figuratively speaking, walk in at the front door of the mansion of a given mind and leisurely explore the entire building, noting all its details, walking out again with a complete picture of the interior of the building, without the owner of the building so much as knowing that he or she has entertained a visitor. You will observe in Lesson 11, on accurate thought, that this principle may be put to a very practical use, having reference to the principle of the chemistry of the mind. Enough has already been said to introduce the principle of mind chemistry, and to prove, with the aid of your own everyday experiences and casual observations, that the moment two minds come within close range of each other a noticeable mental change takes place in both, sometimes registering in the nature of antagonism and at other times registering in the nature of friendliness. Every mind has what might be termed an electric field. The nature of this field varies, depending upon the mood of the individual mind and upon the nature of the chemistry of the mind creating the field. It is my belief that the normal or natural condition of the chemistry of any individual mind is the result of physical heredity plus the nature of thoughts which have dominated the mind. Every mind is continuously changing to the extent that the individual's philosophy and general habits of thought change the chemistry of the mind. This is my theory, that any individual may voluntarily change the chemistry of his or her mind so that it will attract or repel all with whom it comes in contact is a known fact. Stated in another way, any person may assume a mental attitude that will attract and please others or repel and antagonize them, and this without the aid of words or facial expression or other form of bodily movement or demeanor. Go back now to the definition of a mastermind. A mind which grows out of the blending and coordination of two or more minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. And you will catch the full significance of the word harmony. Two minds will not blend, nor can they be coordinated, unless the element of perfect harmony is present. That is the secret of success or failure of practically all business and social partnerships. Every sales manager and every military commander and every leader in any walk of life understands the necessity of an esprit de corps, a spirit of common understanding and cooperation, in the attainment of success. This mass spirit of harmony of purpose is obtained through discipline, voluntary or forced, of such a nature that the individual minds become blended into a mastermind. That is, the chemistry of the individual minds is modified in such a manner that these minds blend and function as one. The methods through which this blending process takes place are as numerous as the individuals engaged in all the various forms of leadership. Every leader has a method of coordinating the minds of his or her followers. One will use force, another persuasion. One will play upon the fear of penalties while another plays upon rewards. The aim will be to reduce the individual minds of a given group of people to the point that they may be blended into a mass mind. You will not have to search deeply into the history of statesmanship, politics, business, or finance to discover the techniques employed by the leaders in these fields in the process of blending the minds of individuals into a mass mind. If you do not believe in cooperation, look what happens to a wagon that loses a wheel. The really great leaders of the world, however, have been provided by nature with mind chemistry favorable as a nucleus of attraction for other minds. Napoleon was a notable example of a man with a magnetic type of mind that had a very decided tendency to attract all minds with which it came in contact. Soldiers followed Napoleon to certain death without flinching, because of the impelling or attracting nature of his personality, and that personality was nothing more nor less than the chemistry of his mind. Commentary Hill is here creating his own definition and explanation of charisma, which originally meant a kind of religious power or leadership that made certain individuals unusually magnetic. The subject fascinated religious and political historians, psychologists, and other social scientists for many years, for a century after his death, because of the power he apparently was able to exert on those around him. Bonaparte was a prime example of a charismatic leader. When Hill first wrote Law of Success, Napoleon Bonaparte held the same kind of interest for many people that Hitler holds today. End of commentary. The making of the mastermind. No group of minds can be blended into a mastermind if one of the individuals of that group possesses an extremely negative mind. The negative and positive minds will not blend in the sense here described as a mastermind. Lack of knowledge of this fact has brought many an otherwise able leader to defeat. Any able leader who understands this principle of mind chemistry may temporarily blend the minds of individuals into a mass mind. But the composition will disintegrate almost the very moment the leader's presence is removed from the group. The most successful life insurance sales organizations and other sales forces meet once a week, or more often. For the purpose of what? For the purpose of merging the individual minds into a mastermind which will, for a few days, serve as a stimulus to the individual minds. It may be, and generally is, true that the leaders of these groups do not understand what actually takes place in those meetings. The routine of such meetings is usually given over to talks by the leader and other members of the group, and occasionally from someone outside of the group. Meanwhile, the minds of the individuals are contacting and recharging one another. The brain of a human being may be compared to an electric battery in that it will become exhausted or run down, causing the owner of that brain to feel despondent, discouraged, and lacking in energy. Who is so fortunate as never to have had such a feeling? The human brain, when in this depleted condition, must be recharged, and the manner in which this is done is through contact with a more vital mind or minds. Commentary. A great deal of New Age thinking and the study of the practices of Asian philosophy and religion have created a number of ways unknown to Hill of recharging the mind. Yoga, meditation, various forms of prayer, spinning, and other techniques all have their devotees. The latter part of the 20th century also saw tremendous interest in what is often referred to as the personal growth or human potential movement. It has fostered countless best-selling books, audio tape courses, and video programs. And every week thousands of people pay to attend seminars, lectures, and retreats to hear motivational speakers or spiritual leaders inspire them to be better in some aspect of their lives. Some pundits have belittled the lasting effects of such techniques, referring to those who attend as seminar junkies who need a new guru every week to get themselves pumped up. Hill would not have agreed with such a cynical view. He saw diminishing motivation as a perfectly logical aspect of human nature. End of commentary. Sexuality and the mastermind. The great leaders understand the necessity of this recharging process and, moreover, they understand how to accomplish this result. This knowledge is the main feature that distinguishes a leader from a follower. Fortunate is the person who understands this principle sufficiently well to keep his or her brain vitalized or recharged by periodically connecting it with a more vital mind. Sexual contact is one of the most effective of the stimuli through which a mind may be recharged, providing the contact is intelligently made, between a man and woman who have genuine affection for each other. Any other sort of sexual relationship is a devitalizer of the mind. Any competent practitioner of psychotherapy can recharge a brain within a few minutes. Before moving on from this brief reference to sexual contact as a means of revitalizing a depleted mind, it seems appropriate to point out that all of the great leaders, in whatever walks of life they have arisen, have been and are people of highly sexed natures. Commentary Hill's position on the relationship between sexuality and creativity is complex and it changes several times throughout his life. While here recommending the bond between a man and a woman, he seems not to feel impelled to recommend that leaders draw women into their mastermind groups. In later works, notably Think and Grow Rich, he alters his position to recommend sublimation of sexual energy. A factor in this may be that Hill seems to have perceived his audience to be entirely masculine. Practically speaking, the business climate of the 1920s and 1930s did not encourage independent achievement by women. In the original version of Law of Success, virtually all examples are of men, and references to human potentiality are always written with masculine examples. He talks, for example, about what a man may or must do. End of commentary. There is a growing tendency on the part of the best-informed physicians and other health practitioners to accept the theory that all diseases begin when the brain of the individual is in a depleted or devitalized state. Stated in another way, a person who has a perfectly vitalized brain is practically, if not entirely, immune from disease. Health practitioners know that nature, or the mind, cures disease in every instance where a cure is effected. Medicines, faith, laying on of hands, chiropractic, osteopathy, and all other forms of outside stimulant are nothing more than aids to nature, or, to state it correctly, mere methods of setting the chemistry of the mind into motion to the end that it readjusts the cells and tissues of the body, revitalizes the brain, and otherwise causes the human machine to function normally. The most conventional practitioner will admit the truth of this statement. What, then, may be the possibilities of the future developments in the field of mind chemistry, through the principle of harmonious blending of minds? Perfect health may be enjoyed. Through the aid of this same principle, sufficient power may be developed to solve the problem of economic pressure which constantly presses upon every individual. We may judge the future possibilities of mind chemistry by taking inventory of its past achievements, keeping in mind that these achievements have been largely the result of accidental discovery and of chance groupings of minds. Commentary in his references to health and the power of the mind, Napoleon Hill once again demonstrates not only insight but also what can now be seen as foresight. Beginning in the 1960s, what is now commonly called the body-mind connection moved from the fringes of the New Age into the mainstream of American life. Virtually every newspaper, television news program, and popular magazine regularly features stories on the crucial role the mind plays in helping the immune system to heal the body. Techniques to utilize the healing powers of the mind are now taught in most medical schools and are the basis of best-selling books by Dr. Zero. Simonton, Louise Hay, Dr. Bernie Siegel, Ken Daichwal, Dr. Deepak Chopra, and Dr. Andrew Weil, to mention but a few of the more high-profile authors. End of commentary. Mind chemistry and economic power. Mind chemistry may be appropriately applied to the workaday affairs of the economic and commercial world. Through the blending of two or more minds in a spirit of perfect harmony, the principle of mind chemistry may be made to develop sufficient power to enable the individuals whose minds have been thus blended to perform seemingly superhuman feats. Power is the force with which humans achieve success in any undertaking. Power, in unlimited quantities, may be enjoyed by any group of people who possess the wisdom with which to submerge their own personalities and their own immediate individual interests. Through the blending of their minds in a spirit of perfect harmony, observe, profitably, the frequency with which the word harmony appears throughout this chapter. There can be no development of a mastermind where this element of perfect harmony does not exist. The units of one mind will not blend with the units of another mind until the two minds have been aroused and warmed, as it were, with a spirit of perfect harmony of purpose. The moment two minds begin to take divergent roads of interest, the individual units of each mind separate, and the third element, the mastermind that grew out of the friendly or harmonious alliance, will disintegrate. Commentary before you read the following comments on Ford, Edison, and Firestone. It is once again worth noting that Hill wrote this work before many of the great fortunes of America were made and before many of the industries and businesses that play a role in contemporary life were even conceived. Hill was writing at a time when the possibility of an airline industry was barely born, and the entertainment industries, including the great Hollywood studios, the music business, and the television networks were still awaiting the inventions that would make them possible. IBM and the aerospace industry didn't exist, and the computer revolution and the internet were hardly imaginable. As this revised edition is being readied for publication in 2004, it seems somewhat anachronistic to imagine three such powerful business leaders getting together to share ideas. Today, instead of Ford, Firestone, and Edison, it would be a group such as Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Michael Dell. As interesting as such a meeting would probably be, it's hard to imagine them meeting in perfect harmony. And if they did, they might well be violating a half-dozen antitrust laws. Antitrust violations notwithstanding, there are more than enough modern examples of the mastermind at work. What else would you term the coming together of Spielberg, Katzenberg, and Geffen to create DreamWorks? And who hasn't heard the classic example of Wozniak and Jobs huddled in a garage putting together the first Apple computer that launched the computer revolution? End of commentary. Examples of mind chemistry in action. We come now to the study of some well-known men who have accumulated great power, and also great fortunes, through the application of mind chemistry. Let us begin our study with three men who are known to be men of great achievement in their respective fields of economic, business, and professional endeavor. Their names are Henry Ford, Thomas A. Edison, and Harvey S. Firestone. Of the three, Henry Ford is by far the most powerful, if measured in economic and financial power. Mr. Ford is the most powerful man now living on Earth. Many who have studied Mr. Ford believe him to be the most powerful man who ever lived. As far as is known, Ford is the only person now living, or who ever lived, with sufficient power to outwit the money trust of the United States. Ford gathers millions of dollars with as great ease as a child fills a bucket with sand when playing on the beach. It has been said, by those who were in position to know, that Ford, if he needed it, could send out the call for money, gather in $1 billion, and have it available for use within 1 week. No one who knows Ford's achievements doubts this. Those who know him well know that he could do it with no more effort than the average person expends in raising the money to pay a month's house rent. And he could get this money, if he needed it, through the intelligent application of the principles on which this course is based. While Mr. Ford's new automobile was in the process of perfection in 1927, it is said that he received advance orders, with cash payments, for more than 375,000 cars, at an estimated price of $600 per car. This would amount to $225 million that he received before a single car was delivered. Such is the power of confidence in Ford's ability. Thomas Edison, as everyone knows, is a philosopher, scientist, and inventor. He is, perhaps, the keenest Bible student on earth, a student of nature's Bible, however, and not of the myriad man-made Bibles. Mr. Edison has such a keen insight that he has harnessed and combined, for the good of mankind, more of nature's laws than any other person now living or who ever lived. It was he who brought together the point of a needle and a piece of revolving wax in such a way that the vibration of the human voice could be recorded and reproduced through the early phonograph. Edison first harnessed lightning and made it serve as a light for man's use, through the aid of the incandescent bulb. Courage is the standing army of the soul which keeps it from conquest, pillage, and slavery. Henry Van Dyke. Edison gave the world the modern moving picture. These are but a few of his outstanding achievements, the miracles that he performed, not by trickery, under the pretense of superhuman power, but in the very midst of the bright light of science. Transcend all of the so-called miracles described in books of fiction. Harvey Firestone is the moving spirit behind the great Firestone Tire Industry in Akron, Ohio. All three of these men began their business careers without capital and with little formal education. All three men are now well educated. All three are wealthy. All three are powerful. Now let us consider the source of their wealth and power. Thus far we have been dealing only with effect. The true philosopher wishes to understand the cause of a given effect. It is a matter of general knowledge that Ford, Edison, and Firestone are close personal friends and have been so for many years. And that in former years they were in the habit of going away to the woods once a year for a period of rest, meditation, and recuperation. But it is not generally known. It may be doubted that these men know it themselves, that there exists between the three a bond of harmony that has caused their minds to become blended into a mastermind, which is the real source of the power of each. This mastermind, developing from the coordination of the individual minds of Ford, Edison, and Firestone, has enabled these men to tune in on forces and sources of knowledge, with which most people are unfamiliar. More than half this theory is known fact. For example, it is known that these men have great power and that they are wealthy. It is also known that they began without capital and with little schooling. and it is known that they form periodic mind contacts. It is known that they are harmonious and friendly. It is known that their achievements are too outstanding to be easily compared with those of others in their respective fields of activity. These men work with natural laws well known to all economists and natural scientists. As yet, chemistry of the mind is not sufficiently developed to be classed by scientific men in their catalogue of known laws. A mastermind may be created by any group of people who will coordinate their minds in a spirit of perfect harmony. The group may consist of any number from 2 upward. Best results appear to come from the blending of 6 or 7 minds. It has been suggested that Jesus Christ discovered how to make use of the principle of mind chemistry, and that his seemingly miraculous performances grew out of the power he developed through the blending of the minds of the 12 disciples. It has been pointed out that when one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, broke faith, the mastermind immediately disintegrated and Jesus met with supreme catastrophe. Commentary. An opposite example is Adolf Hitler, whose ability to hold the minds of his people in thrall allowed him to dominate Europe, terrify the world, and commit countless crimes against humanity. His immoral use of the mastermind was defeated only by a greater mastermind in which leaders like Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill united their people in a valiant effort. It is interesting to note that in the United States many people had opposed going to war against Hitler and his allies. President Roosevelt, however, applied many of the principles of the laws of success to persuade the public of the necessity and rightness of his cause. Truly great leaders have the ability to create harmony where it does not already exist. Roosevelt's mastermind, like that of Christ, survived his death. Hitler's perished with him. Not every mastermind changes the course of history, but they can still offer important and valuable contributions. In a time when it was unusual for women to start up businesses, Mary Kay Ash invested her life savings in developing and marketing a line of cosmetics. To make her venture a success, she created a mastermind with the women who sold her products. Because so many doors to success were closed to women in that time, she found that when she gave her sales reps an opportunity no one else offered, they responded by working hard for themselves and for her. She used a series of distinctive, highly visible rewards as incentives, most notably the famous pink Mary Kay Cadillacs. Today, more than 200,000 women worldwide sell Mary Kay cosmetics, part of a powerfully successful mastermind. End of commentary. When 2 or more people harmonize their minds and produce the effect known as a mastermind, each person in the group becomes vested with the power to contact and gather knowledge through the subconscious minds of all the other members of the group. This power becomes immediately noticeable, having the effect of stimulating the mind to a higher rate of vibration and otherwise evidencing itself in the form of a more vivid imagination and the consciousness of what appears to be a sixth sense. It is through this sixth sense that new ideas will flash into the mind. These ideas take on the nature and form of the subject dominating the mind of the individual. If the entire group has met for the purpose of discussing a given subject, ideas concerning that subject will come pouring into the minds of all present, as if an outside influence were dictating them. The minds of those participating in the mastermind become like magnets, attracting ideas and thoughts of the most highly organized and practical nature, from no one knows where. The process of mind blending here described as a mastermind may be likened to the act of one who connects many electric batteries to a single transmission wire, thereby stepping up the power flowing over that line. Each battery added increases the power passing over the line by the amount of energy the battery carries. It is the same with blending individual minds into a mastermind. Each mind, through the principle of mind chemistry, stimulates all the other minds in the group, until the mind energy becomes so great that it penetrates to and connects with the universal energy known as ether, which, in turn, touches every atom of the entire universe. The modern radio apparatus substantiates, to a considerable extent, this same theory. Powerful sending or broadcasting stations must be erected through which the vibration of sound is stepped up before it can be picked up by the much higher vibrating energy of the ether and carried in all directions. A mastermind made up of many individual minds, so blended that they produce a strong vibrating energy, constitutes almost an exact counterpart of the radio broadcasting station. Every public speaker has felt the influence of mind chemistry, for it is a well-known fact that as soon as the individual minds of an audience become en rapport with the speaker, attuned to the rate of vibration of the mind of the speaker, there is a noticeable increase of enthusiasm in the speaker's mind, and he or she often rises to heights of oratory which surprise all, including themselves. The first 5 to 10 minutes of the average speech are devoted to what is known as warming up. This is the process through which the minds of the speaker and the audience are becoming blended in a spirit of perfect harmony. Every speaker knows what happens when this state of perfect harmony fails to materialize on part of their audience. The seemingly supernatural phenomena occurring in spiritualistic meetings are the result of the reaction, upon one another, of the minds in the group. These phenomena seldom begin to manifest themselves in less than 10 to 20 minutes after the group is formed, for the reason that this is about the time required for the minds in the group to become harmonized or blended. Vibrations. The messages received by members of a spiritualistic group probably come from one of two sources, or from both. From the vast storehouse of the subconscious mind of some member of the group, or from the universal storehouse, in which I believe all thought vibration is preserved. Neither any known natural law nor human reason supports the theory of communication with a person who has died. Any individual may explore the store of knowledge in another's mind through this principle of mind chemistry, and it seems reasonable to suppose that this power may be extended to include contact with whatever vibrations are available in the ether, if there are any. Matter and energy, the two known elements of the universe, may be transformed, but neither created nor destroyed. The theory that all the higher and more refined vibrations, such as those of thought, are preserved grows out of that fact. It is reasonable to suppose that all vibrations that have been stepped up sufficiently will go on forever. The lower vibrations probably live a natural life and die out. All the so-called geniuses probably gained their reputations because by mere chance or otherwise, they formed alliances with other minds which enabled them to step up their own mind vibrations and enabled them to contact the vast temple of knowledge recorded and filed in the ether of the universe. Inquiring further into the source of economic power as manifested by achievements in the field of business, let us study the Chicago group known as the Big Six, consisting of William Wrigley Jr., who owns the chewing gum business bearing his name, and whose individual income is said to be more than $15 million a year. John R. Thompson, who operates the chain of lunch rooms bearing his name. Mr. Lasker, who owns the Lord and Thomas Advertising Agency. Mr. McCulloch, who owns the Palmerlee Express Company, the largest transfer business in America, and Mr. Ritchie and Mr. Hertz, who own the yellow taxicab business. A reliable financial reporting company has estimated the yearly income of these 6 men at upward of $25 million, or an average of more than $4 million a year per man. Men cease to interest us when we find their limitations. The only sin is limitation. As soon as you once come up to a man's limitations, it is all over with him. Emerson. Analysis of this entire group of 6 men indicates that not one of them had any special educational advantages, that all began without capital or extensive credit, that their financial achievement has been due to their own individual plans, and not to any fortunate turn of the wheel of chance. Many years ago these 6 men formed a friendly alliance, meeting at stated periods for the purpose of assisting one another with ideas and suggestions in their various lines of business. With the exception of Hertz and Ritchie, none of the 6 men was in any manner associated in a legal partnership. These meetings were strictly for the purpose of cooperating on a give-and-take basis, assisting one another with ideas and suggestions, and occasionally endorsing notes and other securities to assist some member of the group who had met with an emergency. It is said that each of the individuals belonging to this Big Six group is a millionaire many times over. As a rule, there is nothing worthy of special comment about a man who does nothing more than accumulate a few $1 million. However, there is something connected with the financial success of this particular group of men that one is well worth comment, study, analysis, and even emulation. And that something is the fact that they have learned how to coordinate their individual minds by blending them in a spirit of perfect harmony, thereby creating a mastermind that unlocks, to each member of the group, doors which are closed to most of the human race. The United States Steel Corporation is one of the strongest and most powerful industrial organizations in the world. The idea out of which this great industrial giant grew was born in the mind of Elbert H. Gary, a more or less commonplace small-town lawyer who was born and reared near Chicago. Mr. Gary surrounded himself with a group of men whose minds he successfully blended in a spirit of perfect harmony, thereby creating the mastermind that is the moving spirit of the United States Steel Corporation. Search where you will, wherever you find an outstanding success in business, finance, industry, or in any of the professions. You may be sure that behind the success is some individual who has applied the principle of mind chemistry, out of which a mastermind has been created. These outstanding successes often appear to be the handiwork of just one person, but search closely and the other individuals whose minds have been coordinated with the Creator's mind may be found. Remember that 2 or more persons may operate the principle of mind chemistry so as to create a mastermind. Commentary. One of the notable success stories of the computer age is the Intel Corporation, and as this edition is being readied for publication, it is one of the leaders in the computer chip industry. The most famous figure at Intel is Andrew Grove, the company's CEO, once an immigrant who supported himself waiting tables. Grove's keen skills as a manager, however, are only a part of the reason for Intel's success. For Grove is part of a mastermind that includes Robert Noyce and Gordon Moore, the men whose technical knowledge and innovation helped drive the company forward. Each of these men is brilliant in his own right, but together they have made Intel into one of the dominating companies in its field, and one of the most consistently profitable businesses in the volatile high-tech industry. End of commentary. When knowledge is power, power is organized knowledge, expressed through intelligent efforts. No effort can be said to be organized unless the individuals engaged in that effort coordinate their knowledge and energy in a spirit of perfect harmony. Lack of such harmonious coordination of effort is the main cause of practically every business failure. I conducted an interesting experiment in collaboration with the students of a well-known college. Each student was requested to write an essay, how and why Henry Ford became wealthy. Each was required to describe, as a part of his or her essay, what was believed to be the nature of Ford's real assets and of what these assets consisted in detail. The majority of the students gathered financial statements and inventories of the Ford assets and used these as the basis of their estimates of Ford's wealth. The sources of Ford's wealth included cash in banks, raw and finished materials in stock, real estate, land and buildings, and goodwill, estimated at from I0 to 25% of the value of the material assets. One student out of the entire group of several hundred answered as follows. Henry Ford's assets consist, in the main, of two items. That is, 1. Working capital and raw and finished materials. 2. The knowledge, gained from experience, of Henry Ford himself, and the cooperation of a well-trained organization which understands how to apply this knowledge to best advantage from the Ford viewpoint. It is impossible to estimate, with anything approximating correctness, the actual dollars and cents value of either of these two groups of assets, but it is my opinion that their relative values are: the organized knowledge of the Ford organization 75%, the value of cash and physical assets of every nature, including raw and finished materials 25%. Unquestionably the biggest asset that Henry Ford has is his own brain. Next would come the brains of his immediate circle of associates, for it has been through coordination of these that the physical assets he controls were accumulated. You cannot become a power in your community nor achieve enduring success in any worthy undertaking until you become big enough to blame yourself for your own mistakes and reverses. Destroy every plant the Ford Motor Company owns, every piece of machinery, every atom of raw or finished material, every finished automobile, and every dollar on deposit in any bank, and Ford would still be the most powerful man, economically, on Earth. The brains that have built the Ford business could duplicate it again in short order. Capital is always available, in unlimited quantities, to such brains as Ford's. Ford is the most powerful man, economically, because he has the keenest and most practical conception of the principle of organized knowledge of any man on earth. Despite Ford's great power and financial success, it may be that he has blundered often in the application of the principles through which he accumulated this power. There is little doubt that Ford's methods of mind coordination have often been crude. They were bound to be so in the earlier days of his experience, before he gained the wisdom of application that would naturally go with maturity of years. There can't be much doubt that Ford's application of the principle of mind chemistry was, at least at the start, the result of a chance alliance with other minds, particularly the mind of Edison. It is more than probable that Mr. Ford's remarkable insight into the laws of nature was first begun as the result of his friendly alliance with his own wife, long before he ever met either Mr. Edison or Mr. Firestone. Many a man who never knows the real source of his success is made by his wife, through application of the mastermind principle. Mrs. Ford is a most remarkably intelligent woman, and I believe that it was her mind, blended with Mr. Ford's, that gave him his first real start toward power. It may be mentioned, without in any way depriving Mr. Ford of any honor or glory, that in his earlier days he had to combat the powerful enemies of illiteracy and ignorance to a greater extent than did either Edison or Firestone, both of whom were gifted by natural heredity with a most fortunate aptitude for acquiring and applying knowledge. Ford had to hew this talent out of the rough, raw timbers of his hereditary estate. Within an inconceivably short period of time, Ford has mastered 3 of the most stubborn enemies of mankind and transformed them into assets constituting the very foundation of his success. These enemies are ignorance, illiteracy, and poverty. Anyone who can stay the hand of these 3 savage forces, much less harness and use them to good account, is well worth close study by the less fortunate individuals. This is an age of industrial power in which we are living, and the source of all this power is organized effort. Not only has the management of industrial enterprises efficiently organized individual workers, but in many instances mergers of industry have been effected in such a way and to the end that these combinations, as in the case of the United States Steel Corporation, for example, have accumulated practically unlimited power. One may hardly glance at the day's news without seeing a report of some business, industrial, or financial merger, bringing under one management enormous resources and thus creating great power. One day it is a group of banks, another day a chain of railroads, the next day it is a combination of steel plants, all merging for the purpose of developing power through highly organized and coordinated effort. Knowledge, general in nature and unorganized, is not power. It is only potential power, the raw material out of which real power may be developed. Any modern library contains an unorganized record of all the knowledge of value to which the present stage of civilization is heir. But this knowledge is not power because it is not organized. Every form of energy and every species of animal or plant life, to survive, must be organized. The oversized animals whose remains have filled nature's boneyard through extinction have left mute but certain evidence that non-organization means annihilation. From the smallest particle of matter to the largest star in the universe, these and every material thing in between these 2 extremes offer proof positive that one of nature's first laws is that of organization. Fortunate is the individual who recognizes the importance of this law and makes it his or her business to familiarize themselves with the various ways in which the law may be applied to advantage. The astute Busan Esperson has not only recognized the importance of the law of organized effort, but they have made this law the warp and the woof of their power. Without any knowledge whatsoever of the principle of mind chemistry, or even that such a principle exists, many influential persons have accumulated great power by merely organizing the knowledge that they possessed. The majority of those who have discovered the principle of mind chemistry, and developed that principle into a mastermind, have stumbled upon this knowledge by the merest of accident, often failing to recognize the real nature of their discovery or to understand the source of their power. I am of the opinion that all living persons who at the present time are consciously making use of the principle of mind chemistry in developing power through the blending of minds may be counted on the fingers of two hands, with perhaps several fingers left to spare. If this estimate is even approximately true, there is little danger that the field of mind chemistry will become overcrowded. It is a known fact that one of the most difficult tasks anyone in business must perform is inducing associates to coordinate their efforts in a spirit of harmony. To induce continuous cooperation between a group of workers in any undertaking is next to impossible. Only the most efficient leaders can accomplish this highly desired objective. But once in a great while such a leader will rise above the horizon in the field of industry, business, or finance, and then the world hears of a Henry Ford, Thomas A. Edison, John D. Rockefeller Sr., E. H. Harriman, or James J. Hill. Power and success are practically synonymous terms. One grows out of the other. Therefore, any person who has the knowledge and the ability to develop power through the principle of harmonious coordination of effort between individual minds, or in any other manner, may be successful in any reasonable undertaking that is possible of successful termination. Harmony. It must not be assumed that a mastermind will immediately spring, mushroom fashion, out of every group of minds that makes pretense of coordination in a spirit of harmony. Harmony, in the real sense of the meaning of the word, is as rare among groups of people as is genuine Christianity among those who proclaim themselves Christians. Harmony is the nucleus around which the state of mind known as a mastermind must be developed. Without this element there can be no mastermind, a truth that cannot be repeated too often. In his proposal for establishing the League of Nations, Woodrow Wilson had in mind the development of a mastermind to be composed of groups of minds representing the civilized nations of the world. Wilson's conception was the most far-reaching humanitarian idea ever created in the mind of man, because it dealt with a principle that embraces sufficient power to establish a real brotherhood of man on earth. The League of Nations, or some similar blending of international minds in a spirit of harmony, is sure to become a reality. Commentary. The League of Nations that Hill refers to was established in 1920, after the First World War, for the purpose of promoting world peace and cooperation, and though it was first proposed by President Woodrow Wilson, the United States never joined the organization, which seriously impeded its effectiveness. After the Second World War, the League of Nations was superseded by the creation of the United Nations, of which America was one of the founding nations. Unfortunately, The UN has not often lived up to Hill's conception of a mastermind, which requires that the participants come together in perfect harmony. End of commentary. The time when such unity of minds will take place will be measured largely by the time required for the great universities and non-sectarian institutions of learning to supplant ignorance and superstition with understanding and wisdom. This time is rapidly approaching. Commentary: failure to develop a mastermind can create enormous, embarrassing fiascos. The Metropolitan Transit Authority of New York owned a valuable piece of property on Columbus Circle, one of the city's busiest intersections. The old Coliseum there had been made obsolete by a new convention center, so the Transit Authority decided to sell the land to a developer for a new building. Several companies bid, and a winner was selected. When the design for the building was unveiled, however, there was enormous public outcry, for the building was so large that its shadow would lie over vast stretches of Central Park. So the developers paid for a new building design, but it, too, was greeted with public dismay, for it made only a token effort to address the many objections. Citizen groups circulated petitions and threatened lawsuits. Wealthy individuals who lived in the neighborhood protested just as loudly as did people on the street, because all felt that the park was threatened. The transit authority, the developer, even the city government tried to make the building happen, but at every turn they were stymied by people who were outraged. Finally, the developer gave up. Hundreds of millions of dollars had been spent on the project. The transit authority lost its sale. Construction jobs were lost, and the Coliseum sat empty and unused for a decade. All this because the leaders of the project failed to create harmony among the people of the city. End of commentary. Never, in the history of the world, has there been such abundant opportunity as there is now for the person WHO is willing to serve before trying to collect. The old religious orgy known as the Revival Meeting offers a favorable opportunity to study the principle of mind chemistry created within a mastermind. It will be observed that music plays no small part in bringing about the harmony essential to the blending of a group of minds in such a meeting. Without music, the revival meeting would be a tame affair. During revival services, the leader of the meeting has no difficulty in creating harmony in the minds of his devotees. But it is well known that this state of harmony lasts no longer than the presence of the leader, after which the mastermind that leader has temporarily created disintegrates. By arousing the emotional nature of his followers, the revivalist has no difficulty, with the proper stage setting music, in creating a mastermind which becomes noticeable to all who come in contact with it. The very air becomes charged with a positive, pleasing influence that changes the entire chemistry of all minds present. The revivalist calls this energy the Spirit of the Lord. Through experiments conducted with a group of scientific investigators and laymen, all of whom were unaware of the nature of the experiment, I have created the same state of mind and the same positive atmosphere without calling it the Spirit of the Lord. On several occasions I have witnessed the creation of this same positive atmosphere among a group of men and women engaged in the business of salesmanship, without calling it the Spirit of the Lord. I once helped conduct a school of salesmanship for Harrison Parker, founder of the Cooperative Society of Chicago, and, by the use of the principle of mind chemistry that revivalists call the Spirit of the Lord, so transformed the nature of a group of 3,000 men and women, all of whom were without former sales experience, that they sold more than $10 million worth of securities in less than 9 months and earned more than $9 million for themselves. It was found that the average person who joined this school would reach the zenith of his or her selling power within 1 week, after which it was necessary to revitalize the individual's brain through a group sales meeting. These sales meetings were conducted on very much the same order as other modern revival meetings, with much the same stage equipment, including music and high-powered speakers who could exhort the salespeople. Commentary: not to belabor the obvious, but the style of presentation that Hill refers to in commenting on the similarity between revival meetings and his sales meetings can also be seen at almost any self-help or personal growth seminar. End of commentary. Call it religion, psychology, mind chemistry, or anything you please. They are all based on the same principle. But there is nothing more certain than that wherever a group of minds are brought into contact, in a spirit of perfect harmony, each mind becomes immediately supplemented and reinforced by the noticeable energy called a mastermind. For all I profess to know, this uncharted energy may be the Spirit of the Lord, but it operates just as favorably when called by any other name. The human brain and nervous system constitute a piece of intricate machinery which but few, if any, understand. When controlled and properly directed, this piece of machinery can be made to perform wonders of achievement. And if not controlled, it will perform wonders fantastic and phantom-like in nature, as may be seen by observing the patients of any psychiatric hospital. The human brain has direct connection with a continuous influx of energy from which we derive our power to think. The brain receives this energy, mixes it with the energy created by the food taken into the body, and distributes it to every portion of the body through the aid of the blood and the nervous system. It thus becomes what we call life. Every normal human body has a first-class chemical laboratories and a stock of chemicals sufficient to carry on the business of breaking up, assimilating, and properly mixing and compounding the food we take into the body, preparatory to distributing it to wherever it is needed as a bodybuilder. Tests have been made, both with humans and animals, to prove that the energy known as the mind plays an important part in this chemical operation of compounding and transforming food into the required substances to build and keep the body in repair. It is known that worry, excitement, or fear will interfere with the digestive process, and in extreme cases stop this process altogether, resulting in illness or death. It is obvious, then, that the mind enters into the chemistry of food digestion and distribution. It is believed by many eminent authorities, although it may never have been scientifically proved, that the energy known as mind or thought may become contaminated with negative or unsociable elements, causing the entire nervous system to be thrown out of working order. Digestion is interfered with and various diseases will manifest themselves. Financial difficulties and unrequited love affairs head the list of causes of such emotional disturbances. A negative environment, such as that existing where some member of the family is constantly nagging, will interfere with the chemistry of the mind to the point that the individual loses ambition and gradually sinks into oblivion. It is because of this fact that the old saying that a man's wife may either make or break him is literally true. In a subsequent lesson, a section on this subject is addressed to spouses. Anyone knows that certain food combinations will, if taken into the stomach, result in indigestion, violent pain, and even death. Good health depends, at least in part, on a food combination that harmonizes. But harmony of food combinations is not sufficient to ensure good health. There must also be harmony between the elements of energy known as the mind. A man is half-whipped the minute he begins to feel sorry for himself, or to spin an alibi with which he would explain away his defects. Harmony seems to be one of nature's laws without which there can be no such thing as organized energy, or life in any form whatsoever. The health of the body as well as the mind is literally built out of, around, and on the principle of harmony. The energy known as life begins to disintegrate and death approaches when the organs of the body stop working in harmony. The moment harmony ceases at the source of any form of organized energy, power, the units of that energy are thrown into a chaotic state of disorder and the power is rendered neutral or passive. Harmony is also the nucleus around which the principle of mind chemistry known as a master mind develops power. Destroy this harmony and you destroy the power that can grow out of the coordinated effort of a group of individual minds. This truth has been stated, restated, and presented in every manner that I could conceive, with unending repetition. But unless you grasp this principle and learn to apply it, this lesson is useless. Success in life, no matter what one may call success, is very largely a matter of adaptation to environment in such a manner that there is harmony between the individual and their environment. The palace of a king becomes as a hovel of a peasant if harmony does not abound within its walls. Conversely, the hut of a peasant may be made to yield more happiness than the mansion of the rich man, if harmony exists in the former and not in the latter. Without perfect harmony, the science of astronomy would be as useless as the bones of a sun because the stars and planets would clash with one another, and all would be in a state of chaos and disorder. Without the law of harmony, an acorn might grow into a heterogeneous tree consisting of the wood of the oak, poplar, maple, and whatnot. Without the law of harmony there cannot be proper organization of knowledge. For what, may one ask, is organized knowledge except the harmony of facts and truths and natural laws? The moment discord begins to creep in at the front door, harmony edges out at the back door, so to speak. Whether this application is made to a business partnership or the orderly movement of the planets of the heavens. If you get the impression that I am laying undue stress on the importance of harmony, remember that lack of harmony is the first, and often the last and only, cause of failure. There can be no poetry nor music nor oratory worthy of notice without the presence of harmony. Good architecture is largely a matter of harmony. Without harmony a house is nothing but a mass of building material, more or less a monstrosity. Sound business management plants the very sinews of its existence in harmony. Every well-dressed man or woman is a living picture and a moving example of harmony. With all these workaday illustrations of the important part that harmony plays in the affairs of the world, no, in the operation of the entire universe, how could any intelligent person leave harmony out of their definite chief aim in life? Could any definite aim in life omit harmony as the chief stone of its foundation? Knowledge and power. The human body is a complex organization of organs, glands, blood vessels, nerves, brain cells, muscles, etc. The mind that stimulates to action and coordinates the efforts of the component parts of the body is also a plurality of ever-varying and changing energies. From birth until death there is continuous struggle, often assuming the nature of open combat, between the forces of the mind. For example, the lifelong struggle between the motivating forces and desires of the mind, which takes place between the impulses of right and wrong, is well known to everyone. Every human being possesses at least 2 distinct personalities, and as many as 6 distinct personalities have been discovered in one person. One of man's most delicate tasks is that of harmonizing these mind forces so that they may be organized and directed toward the orderly attainment of a given objective. Without this element of harmony, no individual can become an accurate thinker. It is no wonder that leaders in business and industrial enterprises, as well as those in politics and other fields of endeavor, can find it so difficult to organize groups of people so that they will function in the attainment of a given objective, without friction. Each individual human being possesses inner forces that are difficult to harmonize, even when placed in the environment most favorable to harmony. If the chemistry of the individual's mind is such that the units of the mind cannot be easily harmonized, think how much more difficult it must be to harmonize a group of minds so they will function as one, in an orderly manner, through a mastermind. The leader who successfully develops and directs the energies of a mastermind must possess tact, patience, persistence, self-confidence, intimate knowledge of mind chemistry, and the ability to adapt, in a state of perfect poise and harmony, to quickly changing circumstances, without showing the least sign of annoyance. How many are there who can measure up to this requirement? The successful leader must have the ability to change the color of the mind, chameleon-like, to fit every circumstance that arises in connection with the object of leadership. Moreover, he or she must have the ability to change from one mood to another without showing the slightest signs of anger or lack of self-control. The successful leader must understand the 17 laws of success and be able to put into practice any combination of these 17 laws whenever the occasion demands. Without this ability no leader can be powerful, and without power no leader can long endure. The meaning of education. There has long been a general misconception of the meaning of the word educate. The dictionaries have not aided in the elimination of this misunderstanding, because they have defined the word educate as an act of imparting knowledge. The word educate has its roots in the Latin word educo, which means to develop from within, to educe, to draw out, to grow through the law of use. Nature hates idleness in all its forms. She gives continuous life only to those elements that are in use. Tie up an arm, or any other portion of the body, taking it out of use, and the idle part will soon atrophy and become lifeless. Reverse the order. Give an arm more than normal use, such as that engaged in by the blacksmith who wields a heavy hammer all day long, and that arm, developed from within, grows strong. Organized knowledge in action. Power grows out of organized knowledge. But, mind you, it grows out of it only through application and use. A person may become a walking encyclopedia of knowledge without possessing any power of value. This knowledge becomes power only to the extent that it is organized, classified, and put into action. Some of the best educated people the world has known possessed much less general knowledge than some who have been known as fools. The difference between the two being that the former put into use what knowledge they possessed while the latter made no such application. An educated person is one who knows how to acquire everything needed in the attainment of their main purpose in life, without violating the rights of others. By that definition, many knowledgeable individuals come nowhere near qualifying as educated. Similarly, it might also be a great surprise to many who believe they suffer from lack of learning to know that they are well educated. Commentary. Henry Ford, as cited often, is one example. Another is Albert Einstein, who could barely eke out a living as a patent clerk until he began organizing his knowledge of physics. And U.S. President Harry S. Truman had nothing more than a high school education. He laughed once that he was such a poor speller that when he wrote the word dictionary, had to look on the back to see how to spell the book itself. But all of these men commanded power in different ways. End of commentary. The uses of learning. The successful lawyer is not necessarily the one who memorizes the greatest number of the principles of law. On the contrary, the successful lawyer is the one who knows where to find a principle of law, plus a variety of opinions supporting that principle, which fit the immediate needs of a given case. In other words, the successful lawyer is the one who knows where to find the law he or she wants when needed. This principle applies, with equal force, to the affairs of industry and business. Henry Ford had but little elementary schooling, yet he is one of the best educated men in the world because he has acquired the ability to combine natural and economic laws. To say nothing of the minds of other men, that he has the power to get anything of a material nature he wants. During the First World War, Mr. Ford brought suit against the Chicago Tribune, charging the newspaper with libelous publication of statements about him, one of which was that Ford was an ignoramus, an ignorant pacifist, and so forth. When the suit came up for trial, the attorneys for the Tribune undertook to prove, through Ford himself, that their statement was true, that he was indeed ignorant, and with this object in view they catechized and cross-examined him on all manner of subjects. Seek the counsel of those who will tell you the truth about yourself. Even if it hurts you to hear it, mere commendation will not bring the improvement you need. One question they asked was, how many soldiers did the British send over to subdue the rebellion in the colonies in 1776? With a dry grin on his face, Ford nonchalantly replied, "I do not know just how many. But I have heard that it was a lot more than ever went back." Loud laughter erupted from court, jury, courtroom spectators, and even from the frustrated lawyer who had asked the question. This line of interrogation continued for an hour or more, with Ford keeping perfectly calm in the meantime. Finally, however, he was tired of the smart aleck lawyers, and in reply to a question that was particularly obnoxious and insulting, Ford straightened himself up, pointed his finger at the questioning lawyer, and replied, "If I should really wish to answer the foolish question you have just asked, or any of the others you have been asking, Let me remind you that I have a row of electric push buttons hanging over my desk, and by placing my finger on the right button I could call in men who could give me the correct answer to all the questions you have asked and to many that you have not the intelligence either to ask or answer. Now, will you kindly tell me why I should bother about filling my mind with a lot of useless details in order to answer every fool question that anyone may ask, when I have able men all about me who can supply me with all the facts I want when I call for them? This answer is quoted from memory, but it substantially relates Ford's answer. There was silence in the courtroom. The questioning attorney's jaw dropped down and his eyes opened wide. The judge leaned forward from the bench and stared at Ford. Many of the jury awoke and looked around as if they had heard an explosion, which they actually had. A prominent clergyman who was present in the courtroom at the time said later that the scene reminded him of what must have existed when Jesus Christ was on trial before Pontius Pilate. Just after he had given his famous reply to Pilate's question, "Are you a king?" in the vernacular of the day, Ford's reply knocked the questioner cold. Up until that reply, the lawyer had been enjoying considerable fun at what he had believed to be Ford's expense, by adroitly displaying his general knowledge and comparing it with what he inferred to be Ford's ignorance as to many events and subjects. That answer spoiled the lawyer's fun. It also proved once more, to all who had the intelligence to accept the proof, that true education means mind development, not merely the gathering and classifying of knowledge. Ford could not, in all probability, have named the capitals of all the states of the United States, but he could have, and in fact had, gathered the capital with which to turn many wheels within every state in the Union. Education, let us not forget this, consists of the power with which to get everything one needs, when one needs it, without violating the rights of others. Ford comes well within that definition, as the foregoing incident shows. Commentary: as the example of Henry Ford demonstrates, power is organized knowledge expressed through intelligent efforts. Let us consider how a mastermind facilitates the exercise of power. The current era has been called the information age, due in large part to the ease with which information is transferred through computers at speeds and in such volume that were unthinkable even a generation ago. But information is not organized knowledge. In fact, one of the chief complaints of many people is that they have far more information at their disposal than they know what to do with. A few minutes surfing the internet in search of the answer to a particular question can produce a deluge of conflicting, ambiguous information that does nothing to increase one's knowledge. Thousands of facts may have been gathered, but an understanding of those facts, including which are significant and which are not, is necessary before they can be considered knowledge. Still, as Napoleon Hill says, even such knowledge is not power, it is only potential power, the material out of which real power may be developed. Application of this potential power requires properly organized effort. Suppose you had collected the name and address of every CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Having this information represents a potential power, the ability to contact these men and women. Such power might or might not be useful to you. If you were attempting to sell a small starter home in need of much repair, you would be targeting a very unlikely group of buyers. If, on the other hand, You were selling a luxurious estate with state-of-the-art security and communications capability. This group of people would likely be more interested. Clearly, the knowledge you acquire must be suited to your task. If you were indeed selling such an estate and you never attempted to contact these seers, you would not be exercising the potential power of your knowledge, simply because you would have made no effort. And if you sent each of them a box of chocolates and some balloons with a handwritten note about your property, you would be making an effort, but it would not be appropriate. However, if you printed a handsome brochure featuring photographs of the estate and outlining all its unique aspects, you would be applying your knowledge much more usefully, giving you the power to attract the attention of your potential buyers. So far, the selling of this estate has involved at least 3 separate tasks. First, the collection of the names of potential buyers. Second, the creation of an appropriate selling tool. And third, its distribution to your potential buyers. Supposing you interested some of these people, you would also need someone to show the property and eventually to negotiate the terms of the deal. This means at least 5 different tasks, all requiring different kinds of knowledge. You could work to educate yourself for each of these jobs, or you could create a mastermind alliance. You could begin by enlisting a direct mail specialist to collect the list of names. That person could also contribute ideas for the brochure, which would be designed by a graphics artist familiar with all the necessary steps for production. You would handle showing the estate and selling it to your prospective buyers, and the fine points of the deal could be hammered out by an attorney. You would all be united behind a common purpose, dedicating your special skills to the task of making the sale. But who would have truly been responsible for making the sale happen? You, since you were the one who assembled the team that got the job done. End of commentary. There are many learned people who could easily entangle Ford, theoretically, with a maze of questions, none of which he, personally, could answer. But Ford could turn right around and wage a battle in industry or finance that would exterminate those same people, with all of their knowledge and all of their wisdom. Ford could not go into his chemical laboratories and separate water into its component atoms of hydrogen and oxygen and then recombine these atoms in their former order. But he knows how to surround himself with chemists who can do this for him if he wants it done. The person who can intelligently use the knowledge possessed by another is as much, or more, a person of education as the one who merely has the knowledge but does not know what to do with it. The president of a well-known college inherited a large tract of very poor land. This land had no timber of commercial value, no minerals or other valuable appurtenances. Therefore it was nothing but a source of expense to him, for he had to pay taxes on it. The state built a highway through the land. An uneducated man who was driving his automobile over this road observed that this poor land was on top of a mountain that commanded a wonderful view for many miles in all directions. He, the ignorant one, also observed that the land was covered with a growth of small pines and other saplings. This man bought 50 acres of the land for $10 an acre. Near the public highway he built a unique log house to which he attached a large dining room. Near the house he put in a gasoline filling station. Next he built a dozen single-room log houses along the road. These houses he rented out to tourists at $3 a night each. The dining room, the gasoline station, and the log houses brought him a net income of $15,000 the first year. The next year he extended his plan by adding 50 more log houses, with 3 rooms each, which he now rents out as summer country homes to people in a nearby city, at a rental of $150 each for the season. The building material cost him nothing, for it grew on his land in abundance, that same land which the college president believed to be worthless. Moreover, the unique and unusual appearance of the log bungalow served as an advertisement for the plan, whereas many would have considered it a real calamity had they been compelled to build out of such crude materials. Less than 5 miles from the location of these log houses, this same man purchased an old worked-out farm of 150 acres, for $25 an acre, a price the seller believed to be extremely high. By building a dam, 100 feet in length, the purchaser of this old farm turned a stream of water into a lake that covered 15 acres of the land, stocked the lake with fish, then sold the farm off in building lots to people who wanted summer places around the lake. The total profit realized from this simple transaction was more than $25,000, and the time required was 1 summer. Yet this man of vision and imagination was not educated, in the orthodox meaning of the term. Let us keep in mind that it is through these simple illustrations of the use of organized knowledge that one may become educated and powerful. In speaking of that transaction, the college president who sold the 50 acres of worthless land for $500 said, "Just think of it. That man, whom most of us might call ignorant, mixed his ignorance with 50 acres of worthless land and made the combination yield more yearly than I earn from 5 years of application of so-called education." There is an opportunity, if not scores of them, in every state in America to make use of the idea here described. From now on, make it your business to study the lay of all land you see that is similar to the land that this man saw, and you may find a suitable place for developing a similar money-making enterprise. The automobile has caused a great system of public highways to be built throughout the United States. On practically every one of these highways there is a suitable spot for a cabin city for tourists which can be turned into a regular money-making mint by the person with the imagination and self-confidence to do it. Commentary: if you think that Hill's example of starting what we now know as a motel is out of date and no longer applicable, you are not seeing the ideas for the words. As this edition is being edited, Hill's advice is more than 75 years old, yet one of the most exciting new business ventures of this era might well have been inspired by that out-of-date story. Jeff Bezos did exactly what Hill suggested. He looked for a highway on which to set up a business. When he found the right place, he opened a bookstore. The highway that Bezos found was the information highway and the bookstore was Amazon.com. Sometimes the innovation requires specialized education or technical expertise, but just as often the business itself is not especially new. The innovation is in finding the right highway. Laura Brody is another example of someone whose inspiration made her greater than the so-called experts. The author of several cookbooks, she noticed that many people were buying and enjoying the bread machines that had become so popular. But when she noticed that they were not fully satisfied with the bread they were making, her first right move was to write a new cookbook for bread machines. It was an instant success. Then she took her good idea even further. Huge corporations were manufacturing these machines, and other huge corporations were making mixes to use in them. But Brody alone realized that these appliances were different enough from traditional techniques that the old methods weren't enough. What bread machine bakers needed were additives. Simple natural ingredients that professional bakeries used all the time. So she created a line of dough enhancers that could be added to any bread machine recipe, creating a better, more tasty loaf. Soon her bread machine magic was in grocery stores and cooks' catalogs around the country, making home bakers happier and Laura Brody a wealthy and popular entrepreneur. The experts who had been involved in creating these machines, and the flour companies that thought to profit from their popularity, had looked right past a tremendous opportunity that one woman who organized her knowledge profited from. In the mid-1970s, computers were used by big businesses. They were giant, complicated machines too expensive for anyone else to afford. Or such was the conventional wisdom at companies like IBM. Steve Jobs and Stephen Wozniak thought differently. In a garage in California they built a small computer that could fit on a desktop. The company they founded was called Apple. The Apple computer created a revolution in the computer industry, and made multimillionaires of Jobs and Wozniak, because they organized their knowledge in a way that no one had before. Ray Kroc saw that people wanted fast food, and he created McDonald's. Frederick W. Smith saw that people wanted safe, reliable delivery, and he created Federal Express. Bill Bowerman saw people jogging, and he created Nike to make special shoes for the new fad. There are similar opportunities everywhere, in every walk of life, in every area of human endeavor, to achieve success. This course can reveal new opportunities and strategies for personal success, but what it cannot do is give you the benefit of real education, of creating an understanding based on your own efforts. You must resolve to take the ideas that you absorb here and apply them in all your efforts. As this course proceeds, you will learn more about the mastermind, as well as all the other significant principles you must apply. You will begin to see how they all fit together into a harmonious whole, a manner of acting and thinking that takes best advantage of the way the world operates. But only through applying each of these principles will you truly understand how to integrate them. Remember, your own actions will educate you in the laws of success. End of commentary. There are opportunities all around you to make money. This course was designed to help you see these opportunities and to inform you how to make the most of them after you discover them. WHO can profit most by the law of success philosophy. Transportation officials who want a better spirit of cooperation between their employees and the public they serve. Salaried people who wish to increase their earning power and market their services to better advantage. Salespeople who wish to become masters in their chosen field. The law of success philosophy covers every known law of selling and includes many features not included in any other course. Industrial plant managers who understand the value of greater harmony among their employees. Employees who wish to establish records of efficiency that will lead to more responsible positions, with greater pay. Merchants who wish to extend their business by adding new customers. The law of success philosophy will help any merchant increase business by teaching how to make a walking advertisement of every customer who comes into the store. Sales agents or managers who wish to increase the selling power of their sales force. A large part of the Law of Success course was developed from the life work and experience of the greatest automobile salesman, and it is therefore of unusual help to the sales manager who is directing the efforts of a sales force. Life insurance agents who wish to add new policyholders and increase the insurance on present policyholders. One life insurance salesman in Ohio sold a $50,000 policy to one of the officials of the Central Steel Company, as the result of just one reading of the lesson on profiting by failure. This same salesman has become one of the star men of the New York Life Insurance Company's staff, as the result of his training in the 17 Laws of Success. School teachers who wish to advance to the top in their present occupation or who are looking for an opportunity to enter the field of business as a life's work. Students, both college and high school, who are undecided as to the field of endeavor they wish to enter. The Law of Success course includes a personal analysis chart that will help the student of the philosophy to determine the work for which he or she is best suited. Bankers who wish to extend their business through better service and more courteous methods of serving their clients. Mid-level managers who are ambitious to prepare themselves for executive positions in some commercial or industrial field. Physicians and dentists who wish to extend their practice without violating the ethics of their profession by direct advertising. A prominent physician has said that the Law of Success course is worth $1,000 to any professional man or woman whose professional ethics prevent direct advertising. WHO said it could not be done, and what great victories has he to his credit which qualify him to judge others accurately? Entrepreneurs and promoters who wish to develop new and previously unworked combinations in business or industry. Real estate agents who wish to create new methods for promoting sales. This lesson contains a description of an entirely new real estate promotion plan which is sure to make fortunes for many who will put it to use. This plan may be put into operation in practically every state. Moreover, it may be used by agents who never promoted an enterprise. In fact, the principle described in this introductory lesson is said to have made a small fortune for a man who used it as the basis of a real estate promotion. Farmers who wish to discover new methods of marketing their products so as to give them greater net returns, and those who own land suitable for subdivision promotion under the plan referred to at the end of this lesson. Many farmers have gold mines in the land they own that is not suitable for cultivation, but could be used for recreation and resort purposes on a highly profitable basis. Entry-level service workers who are looking for a practical plan to promote themselves into higher and better paying positions. The Law of Success course is said to be the best course ever written on the subject of marketing personal services. Printers who want a larger volume of business as well as more efficient production through better cooperation among their own employees. Laborers who have the ambition to advance into more responsible positions, in work that has greater responsibilities and consequently offers more pay. Lawyers who wish to extend their clientele through dignified, ethical methods that will bring them to the attention, in a favorable way, of a greater number of people who need legal services. Business executives who wish to expand their present business, or who wish to handle their present volume with less expense, as the result of greater cooperation among their employees. Service industry owners who wish to extend their business by teaching their drivers how to serve more courteously and efficiently. Life insurance general agents who wish bigger and more efficient sales organizations. Chain store managers who want a greater volume of business as the result of more efficient individual sales efforts. Married people who are unhappy, and therefore unsuccessful, because of lack of harmony and cooperation in the home. To all described in the foregoing classification, the law of success philosophy offers both definite and speedy aid. Summary. The mastermind. The main purpose of this lesson is to introduce some of the principles upon which the course is founded. These principles are more accurately described, and the student is taught in a very definite manner how to apply them in the individual lessons which follow. All new ideas, and especially those of an abstract nature, will settle comfortably into the human mind only after much repetition, a well-known truth that accounts for the restatement, in this summary, of the principle known as the mastermind. A mastermind may be developed by a friendly alliance, in a spirit of harmony of purpose, between two or more minds. This is an appropriate place at which to explain that out of every alliance of minds, whether in a spirit of harmony or not, there is developed another mind which affects all participating in the alliance. No two or more minds ever met without creating, out of that contact, another mind. But this creation is not always a mastermind. There may be, and altogether too often there is, developed out of the meeting of two or more minds a negative power which is just the opposite of a mastermind. There are certain minds which, as has been stated throughout this lesson, cannot be made to blend in a spirit of harmony. This principle has its analogy in chemistry. For example, the chemical formula H2O, meaning the combining of two atoms of hydrogen with one atom of oxygen, changes these two elements into water. But one atom of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen will not produce water. Moreover, they cannot be made to associate themselves in harmony. There are many known elements which, when combined, are immediately transformed from harmless into deadly poisonous substances. Stated differently, many well-known poisonous elements are neutralized and rendered harmless when combined with certain other elements. Just as the combining of certain elements changes their entire nature, the combining of certain minds changes the nature of those minds, producing either a certain degree of what has been called a mastermind, or its opposite which is highly destructive. Some minds will not be harmonized and cannot be blended into a mastermind, a fact that all leaders will do well to remember. It is the leader's responsibility to group his or her subordinates so that those who have been placed at the most strategic points in the organization are those whose minds can and will be blended in a spirit of friendliness and harmony. Ability to bring people together is the chief outstanding quality of leadership. In Lesson 2 of this course you will discover that this ability was the main source of both the power and fortune accumulated by the late Andrew Carnegie. An aim in life is the only fortune worth finding, and it is not to be found in foreign lands, but in the heart itself. Robert Louis Stevenson. Knowing nothing whatsoever about the technical end of the steel business, Carnegie so combined and grouped the people of which his mastermind was composed that he built the most successful steel industry known to the world during his lifetime. Henry Ford's gigantic success may be traced to the successful application of this self-same principle, with all the self-reliance that a man could have. Ford, nevertheless, did not depend on himself for the knowledge necessary in the successful development of his industries. Like Carnegie, he surrounded himself with people who supplied the knowledge that he, himself, did not and could not possess. Moreover, Ford picked men who could and did harmonize in group effort. The most effective alliances, which have resulted in the creation of the principle known as the mastermind, have been those developed out of the blending of the minds of men and women. The reason for this is that the minds of male and female will more readily blend in harmony than will the minds of only one gender. As well, the added stimulus of potential sexual contact often enters into the development of a mastermind between a man and a woman. The road to success may be, and generally is, obstructed by many influences that must be removed before the goal can be reached. One of the most detrimental of these obstacles is that of unfortunate alliance with minds that do not harmonize. In such cases the alliance must be broken or the end is sure to be defeat and failure. Those who master the 6 basic fears, one of which is the fear of criticism, will have no hesitancy in taking what may seem to the more convention-bound type of mind to be drastic action when they find themselves circumscribed and bound down by antagonistic alliances, no matter of what nature or with whom they may be. It is 1,000,000 times better to meet and face criticism than to be dragged down to failure and oblivion as a result of alliances that are not harmonious, whether the alliances be of a business or social nature. While it is true that some minds will not blend in a spirit of harmony, and cannot be forced or induced to do so because of the chemical nature of the individual's brains, do not be too ready to charge the other party to your alliance with all the responsibility for lack of harmony. Remember, the trouble may be with your own brain. Remember, also, that a mind that cannot and will not harmonize with one person or persons may harmonize perfectly with other types of minds. Discovery of this has resulted in radical changes in methods of hiring. It is no longer customary to dismiss an employee who does not fit the position for which he or she was originally hired. The discriminating leader endeavors to place such a person in some other position, where, it has been proved more than once, such individuals may become valuable. You should be sure that the principle described as the mastermind is thoroughly understood before proceeding with the remaining lessons of the course. The reason for this is that practically the entire course is closely associated with this law of mind operation. If you are not sure you understand this law, analyze the record of anyone who has accumulated a great fortune, and you will find that they have, either consciously or unconsciously, employed the mastermind principle. No amount of time spent in serious thought and contemplation in connection with the law of the mastermind is too much, for when you have mastered this law, and learned how to apply it, new worlds of opportunity will open to you. Any sales organization may make effective use of the law of the mastermind by grouping the sales force into groups of 2 or more people who will ally themselves in a spirit of friendly cooperation and apply this law as suggested in this lesson. An agent for a well-known make of automobile, who employs a sales force of 12, has grouped the organization into 6 groups of 2 each, with the object of applying the law of the mastermind. As a result, all the salespeople have established new high sales records. This same organization has created what it calls the 1A Week Club, meaning that every member of the club has averaged the sale of 1 car a week since the club was organized. The results of this effort have been surprising to all. Each member of the club was provided with a list of 100 prospective purchasers of automobiles. Each salesperson sends 1 postcard a week to each of those 100 prospective purchasers, and makes personal calls on at least 10 of these each day. Each postcard is confined to the description of just one advantage of the automobile and asks for a personal interview. Interviews have increased rapidly, as have sales. The agent who employs this sales force has offered an extra cash bonus to anyone who earns the right to membership in the 1A Week Club by averaging the sale of 1 car a week. This plan has injected new vitality into the entire organization, and the results are showing in the weekly sales record. A similar plan could also be adopted very effectively by life insurance agencies. Any enterprising general agent might easily double or even triple the volume of business through the use of this plan. Practically no changes whatsoever would need to be made in the method of use of the plan. The club might be called the Policy A Week Club, meaning that each member pledges to sell at least 1 policy, of an agreed minimum amount, each week. The student of this course who has mastered the second lesson, a definite chief aim, and understands how to apply the fundamentals of that lesson, will be able to make much more effective use of the plan here described. It is not suggested or intended that anyone undertake to apply the principles of this lesson until they have mastered at least the next 5 lessons of the Law of Success course. The automobile sales organization to which I have here referred holds a lunchtime meeting once a week. An hour and a half is devoted to the meeting and to the discussion of ways and means of applying the principles of this course. This gives each individual member an opportunity to profit by the ideas of all the other members. If you cannot do great things yourself, remember that you may do small things in a great way. 2 tables are set for the lunch. At one table, all who have earned the right to membership in the Only Week Club are seated. At the other table, which is serviced with tinware instead of china, are those who did not earn the right to membership in the club. These, needless to say, become the object of considerable good-natured chiding from the more fortunate members seated at the other table. It is possible to make an almost endless variety of adaptations of this plan. The justification for its use is that it pays. It pays not only the leader or the manager of the organization, but every member of the sales force as well. I have briefly described this plan here for the purpose of showing you one of many ways to make practical application of the principles outlined in this course. The final acid test of any theory or rule or principle is that it will actually work. The law of the mastermind has been proved sound because it works. If you understand this law, you are now ready to proceed with lesson IWO, a definite chief aim, in which you will be further and much more deeply initiated in the application of the principles described in this introductory lesson.